Today, we're going to be talking about tips for your breastfeeding partner. Okay, we talk a lot about everything that you need for yourself on how to get prepared and what it's going to take for you to have that success for yourself and reach your own breastfeeding goals. But we need to also include our partners into that. That is one of the most important pieces of your success with breastfeeding. And the research does show that breastfeeding partners being supportive and offering the right kind of support can make or break your breastfeeding, reaching your breastfeeding goals. So it's really important that they get involved and that they know that they're a part of this too, okay? And if you are a breastfeeding partner out there, this whole lesson here is for you, okay? You might be wondering, she's got the breasts, she's the one who's gonna be breastfeeding. How can I really do anything when it comes to breastfeeding? Is that really my role? And the answer is yes. It's very, very important that you do this together. It's the way that your baby's going to be eating. Okay, so even though the breasts are connected to mom, everything around it is really a team sport. Okay, this is something that she's going to really need your support with, your help with, and there's quite a bit that you can do to make a huge difference. Okay, you're not just a cheerleader. You're on the field. You're on the field with this. Okay, you really need to be her advocate, and being able to really protect her space and the time that she needs with the new baby. Okay, this is probably the biggest role that you can provide, is being that supportive and knowledgeable advocate for her. All right, I have some really good tips I'm going to go over with you, so that these are some of the most important pieces I think to keep in mind in order to advocate and to support. All right, one of the biggest things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you get prepared beforehand, all right? And part of how you're going to do that is you're going to become educated yourself. Chances are that she's been researching a lot throughout the pregnancy, and especially if she's planning to breastfeed, hopefully she's preparing herself with knowledge and information and the education that she needs. And she's probably passing some key points off to you, but there's more to know. And getting that information yourself, just like watching this video right now, is key to being able to support her in those most difficult moments, which those challenging and difficult moments are going to come. That this is what it is when you have a new baby, all right? And everything can, and a day can seem like a year at times, and she's really gonna be leaning into you for support, all right? Learning the essentials is probably most important. Learning the essentials of breastfeeding, learning the essentials of normal sleep, understanding what's normal is really what I would consider the essentials, so that you can tell the difference between whether there's something really wrong or if everything's just kind of normal, it's just hard. And that's really the difference, is knowing those norms, okay? Also, look for finding somebody that you can turn to for help, like a lactation consultant, someone who's knowledgeable when it comes to breastfeeding, and I'm gonna say that, most people think they can turn to their pediatricians. However, most pediatricians, unless they have further training as a lactation consultant, don't have the education or the knowledge to be able to really support you when it comes to breastfeeding. And this is a surprise for some people, but it really is the truth. And so I want you to make sure that you have a lactation consultant lined up, knowing where you can call. You may not need it, but if you do need it, that you know where you're going to call afterwards. I mean, that is going to be really key in that moment to make that happen, okay? And encouraging her to get the support of a lactation consultant if things are not going as planned, or if you just need extra additional support. If you want to just have somebody make sure that you're doing things well, sometimes that reassurance is worth its weight in gold. So having a really knowledgeable person is important, okay? Remember that she's recovering, and whether she went through a vaginal birth or a C-section, either one, this is probably one of the most vulnerable and difficult times of her life if she's recovering from a pregnancy and now going through the marathon that is labor or surgery from C-section. So I think that, being able to free her up so that she can just free her up from having to manage everything and just spend her time healing from the birth, caring for the new baby, feeding and resting, and making yourself the front point for all of that, so that she can spend her time focusing inward and on herself and on the baby. And also just taking action sooner if something seems off. So these are all important parts for you to really get involved in so that she has that, it frees up her mind. It'll free up her mind for you to take over that role. And she might have been the one in that main role all along. So this is important. Let's see. So the other thing would be just, the fact babies demand a lot of attention, okay? And so sometimes, mom could be focusing all her attention on baby, which she's probably going to be doing, and that's normal. But making sure that she doesn't overlook her own basic needs. So while she's focusing on baby, you're focusing on her, making sure that you're making her food, that she's hydrated, that she's drinking, that she's getting that shower in, and getting that time to rest in between. So maybe she nurses the baby, and then you're taking the baby and doing some of the other needs that the baby has, whether it's changing a diaper or burping or anything else, okay? But feeding mom, so she's feeding baby, you're feeding mom, and that's really, really important. And sometimes that gets overlooked, and mom's going too long without eating. She's going to need to be well nourished and hydrated in order to make milk, as well as to recover from everything that she's just been through. So that really is your role, okay? Make it your responsibility. Make sure that you're all eating well and taking care of each other and yourselves, all right? Try to delegate some of these roles and meal times and making meals and chores to others. People want to come and visit, and the less that's on her responsibility list will be better. Okay, and so giving that off to other family members or friends or everybody who wants to offer support, let them help with laundry, a little bit of cleaning, and definitely meals. I remember that's what I did with my family, my parents, my husband's parents, when we had our first. The only thing we asked for was make us food and just leave it for us and then just go, because we really need our time alone. But getting those meals was extremely important and so helpful, so helpful. A big piece of what you want to be doing as far as your role here is protecting the bond between mother and baby, okay? What does that mean, protecting the bond? Breastfeeding is definitely a time that by design will have them be in close contact all the time. We want that because we want to make sure that the more the baby is with mom, the more skin to skin, the more that she's responding to baby's feeding cues, the more she's going to be feeding on demand, which will help to create a healthy milk supply, which will help to get her uterus to shrink back to normal size, prevent a lot of bleeding, and regulate the baby as far as their temperature stabilization, their heart rate, their respirations. All those things are good if mom is close to baby and doing a lot of skin to skin. It's going to help her to get off on to get breastfeeding off to the right start and help the baby to latch, like actually help the baby latching. So, protecting the bond is protecting the space, and that means all the well-meaning visitors, family, friends that we just discussed, making sure that they're coming, everybody's gonna be excited, everybody's gonna wanna see the baby and come visit, but it's really about mom and baby at that point. So making sure that people come at the right times, and when they're staying too long, that you're ushering them out, having some clear guidelines and rules around it. And don't worry if people get upset. This is not about them, it's about you and your partner and about your baby, and really valuing this time. It's a really sacred time together. So you wanna make sure that too many visitors are not popping in and out and interrupting that natural flow that needs to occur between all of you, and especially mom and baby, okay? Sometimes people want to hold the baby, and that's where mom can really miss those visual feeding cues, all right? So limit those hours and ask people to, like we said, do laundry, cook meals, ask for the support that you need. They're not going to necessarily offer that. Some will. I'm usually the ones who are moms themselves and know and they've been in that situation, but most will not. And so you're going to have to be really clear about what it is that you want and speak up, all right? And don't be afraid to disrupt this. Don't be afraid to anger anybody else, all right? The next tip would be, really work on developing your relationship. There's a lot of ways, and this is where I think sometimes partners can feel like, well, where can I bond with the baby? What can I do to get close to the baby? The way mom's constantly feeding at the breast, which is what we want. So how can I bond? And there's just so many, and the first thought that always comes is, well, can I bottle feed? Can we pump and bottle feed? And while there's nothing wrong with pumping some milk, especially as you go into the later weeks and starting to get the baby used to the bottle after a couple weeks, and especially if you're going back to work. Initially, it's always the time that everybody wants to feed the baby, but the truth is that pumping is really not the ideal thing for mom at this moment. Bottle feeding requires all kinds of additional steps that are not necessarily needed in the beginning. And so take on some of the other roles, you know, versus instead of trying to do the feedings, look at the bath time, look at the diaper changes. These are incredible, great moments for you to bond with your newborn, and also skin to skin. I mean, you can take over that role of skin to skin. Babies can have great skin to skin time with partner or with mom, and they need that for their own well-being. Okay, so I would say that try to avoid the feedings and go for the other things that actually need to get done. All right. And then as far as the last thing, I guess, is on my list of tips here for you is, you know, really celebrate this whole experience, celebrate this time. This is part of what you can do to support her. There's always going to be all kinds of natural doubts and insecurities. And like I said, this is a really vulnerable time for new mothers. And especially when it comes to breastfeeding and wondering, am I making enough? Am I doing this right? Am I okay? Is the baby doing well? That encouragement from you is going to mean more to her than anything else. All right. So making sure that you're telling her what a great job she's doing, spending time, sit there with her, you know, really just encourage her in the moment that this is really, and thank her for what she's doing, because it does take work, but it's something that only she can give to this baby. And so and making sure that you're saying all those things will make a huge difference for mom. You know, she is actually going through a lot. There's a lot of hormonal changes that are happening postpartum. There's a lot of shifts that are occurring. And one of the things to really keep in mind and consider is that, you know, trying to make it all fit back into your old dynamic, trying to go back to where you were pre-pregnancy is sort of one of these pitfalls that I see a lot of parents try to do, where they're trying to fit this all into their old life. And life is not the same anymore. Life is different. And so part of the whole dynamic here is to start to create that new life that you have, the new dynamic that's going on between you and mom and baby. And if there's an older sibling, then it's, again, another family change, a different dynamic, and not trying to fit it into some old paradigm. That can set you all up for a lot of disappointment. It could, you know, really understanding that life has changed, and in a good way. All right, things may be challenging and difficult in the beginning, but it has changed in a really good way, and I can promise you'll never want to go back. This is just a time that you want to start to celebrate and really let her know that you're happy to be in this moment with her. All right, so I hope that all helped you with some really great tips. I mean, these are the main things that I would say are important to focus on, and if you can do these, you guys can get through anything together.